Good morning, I'm Russ Spencer in for Lori Gary. It's Sunday, September 24th, and this is the Georgia Gang. The political heat is rising surrounding Atlanta's proposed public safety training center as the city council takes a vote on counting and scanning signatures of the plan's opponents. Former President Trump says Florida Governor Ron DeSantis made a terrible mistake in passing a 6-week abortion ban like Georgia's. Governor Kemp responds. And another week, another call for a federal investigation of a county jail, this time in Clayton County. Alicia Thomas-Searcy is in for Theron this week, along with Melita, Phil, and Janelle. The discussion begins right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
In the interest of transparency, they say, the Atlanta City Council voted unanimously this week to begin scanning the 116,000 signatures gathered by opponents of the police training center they call Cop City. Governor Kemp emphasized his support this week and called on Democrats to take a stand, accusing some of them of hiding behind a referendum, while the police chief said as far as he's concerned, the people have already had their say.
You have a mayor and 2 city councils by a supermajority back this project, 2 mayors and 2 city councils. That is the opinion of the vast majority of Atlantans.
From Police Chief Darren Shearbaum's perspective, the proposed training center is not an option.
This isn't it would be nice to have. This is a must-have to be properly staffed and to be properly trained to protect this city.
Atlanta City Council members Keisha Waits and Ileana Bakhtiari have proposed legislation that would allow Atlanta residents to vote.
It's my feeling that the voters, not the mayor, not the council, should make these decisions when it comes to spending $67 million and making decisions for our government and our city.
And top Democrats have entered the fray. Senator Raphael Warnock urging Mayor Andre Dickens, a champion of the project, to err on the side of giving people the ability to express their views. 2-time gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams agrees, apparently, telling the AJC the rarely used citizen referendum is designed precisely for this type of fraught issue. Mayor Dickens released a statement following the council vote saying, "I fully support the action taken by City Council today. As I have stated before, I support allowing the process to run its course in an open and transparent manner. Like many, I want to know exactly what is in those boxes, and this moves us one step closer." Now, Governor Kemp tweeted this week that he fully supports the training center because law enforcement and first responders deserve the best training. He went on to say, instead of hiding behind ballot processes or legal questions for a referendum, I hope elected leaders of both parties from across our state will voice their unequivocal support for the training center. Of course, that has not happened. So let's talk about this, Alicia, and begin with you. The governor says this should not be political. What say you?
If the governor and other Republicans believe this should not be political, I think they probably should stay out of this conversation, frankly. A lot of us support the training center. We understand how important this is. We need public safety to be trained effectively. I think the problem is it is becoming political because a lot more people are weighing in. And what we're forgetting is that this is a legal process that the protesters essentially have followed. And so before they got the signatures, I was one of those people who believed that it was a high bar, they weren't going to be able to do it, but they did. They got, 116,000 signatures. And so let's follow the law. Let's not continue to put all these barriers in place. Let them have their say. And I actually believe, Russ, that if this is put on the ballot, that it's going to pass. I think reasonable people understand that this is needed. And I would argue that some of my Republican friends, particularly those who are very high ranking, you're not helping the situation by weighing in, issuing challenges. Let's let this process play out. Let voters have their say, and let's build this training center once and for all.
So are the Republicans enjoying the Democratic division on this?
Well, of course, but I think everybody ought to be debating about this. This cuts across all political and racial lines. And Chief Shearbaum and the fire chief are absolutely correct. This is a must-do, and I think when you see the division in the Democratic ranks, you have Senator Raphael Warnock, who has always been for defunding the police. Let's be honest about it. He doesn't like the police. He's trying to sabotage this facility. I will give some credit to the other Democrat senator, Senator Ossoff. He is more supportive. I think we ought to support the police chief and what he's saying, and Mayor Dickens, and the process has gone on. This is sabotage, what's going on. Stacey Abrams weighs in. You talk about politics. She's never liked the police either.
Well, Melita, Stacey Abrams says this is the kind of fraught issue that a referendum is designed for. Why? Where do you draw the line?
Well,
I think you draw the line on issues that can't generate the signatures for a successful referendum. That's the way you draw the line. I think Phil mischaracterizes the support of law enforcement. Whether or not the center is built in this specific location that's an environmentally sensitive location is part of the issue that some of the opponents have. I think almost everybody agrees and understands that the training center is needed. It's when they chose a location outside the city in DeKalb County that's environmentally sensitive, and when they stonewalled about exactly what kind of training will be offered, then they created the dissension that generated this opposition. And what we have to remember is there's a lot of signatures in those boxes. Now, some of them may not be valid, but even if a 10% say are not valid, that's still a lot of signatures, a lot of citizen activity. And so everybody has to understand the power of the grassroots movement they have unleashed with the early missteps in the way the PR around this training center was handled.
All right, Janelle, what's your take? I mean, 116,000 signatures, if they're legit, that's a lot.
Well, I think the question is if they're legit, and the fact that we're asking that is part of the problem. The fact that there could be signatures that are that shouldn't be in there is the reason why people are so anti this. And I have to make a statement around the governor's involvement. The governor is involved because on several occasions the state trooper had to send the state troopers in to help APD. On several occasions we've seen the National Guard come in to help and deal with issues that APD could not. So the governor's been brought into this because of the fact that there's been so many issues around APD, and we need to increase their police force, and this is how we do it, through the training facility. I'm really over this discussion because for like I said several times, year after year after year, protest after protest after protest, we kept hearing we need better policing, we need better training, we need this and we need that. Now the answer and the solution is in front of you, and now it's an issue about the trees. We've got to stop this. At some point, we got to move on and do what's right for the people that need better policing, and that is the people in that community they claim they're doing this for.
All right. You say you're over it. You know that it's not over. We'll see what happens in the next coming months. Thanks very much. Let's move on. Former President Trump took a shot at Ron DeSantis this week and an indirect one at Brian Kemp, saying in an interview with Meet the Press last Sunday that DeSantis made a terrible mistake in passing a 6-week abortion ban in Florida, which is precisely, of course, what we have here in Georgia. Governor Kemp responded Tuesday on X, tweeting, "There's nothing terrible about standing up for life. In addition to passing the heartbeat bill, Georgia has proudly protected and valued life through implementing adoption and foster care programs and combating human trafficking, and will continue to do so as long as I am governor." So what do you make of all this? And I wondered, well, let me begin with you, Janelle. Do you think that the former president is hurting himself with pro-life voters in the stance that he's taking on this?
You know what, I do. However, I've always said that I think that Trump supporters, particularly more of the MAGA supporters that will support him regardless, I always said I feel like they are more far right than the president is. This is not surprising to me. There's been several statements that President Trump has made that to me tries to kind of balance out the Democrat space. Ultimately, I think if we boil this down or drill it down, I think this goes to the fact that he's hemorrhaging suburban women. And so the abortion issue is definitely, particularly in the Republican Party, is an issue that is, you know, a topic of discussion. A lot of suburban women are pro-choice, as well as they are very conservative in other issues. So I think he's trying to message to them, but in the process of doing that, he's really pulling the evangelicals away from him. So it's interesting to see where this is. I mean, he's up so far in the polls that he kind of has some room to make these type of statements, but I'm frustrated with the fact that I do think that we're moving away from conservatism, right? We're really focusing too much on populism, and I really want us to get back to our core values.
How big an issue is this going to be for the Democrats in 24, Alicia?
I think it's going to be an important issue, and Melita, of course, is the expert on this particular issue. What's interesting to me is that we've already had 4 states in this country who have voted in favor of choice when it was on the ballot. This is in the last year or so. And so what that should say to Republicans is this is probably not the issue to win on. And so as a Democrat, I say, hey, if this is what you want to hang your hat on, go for it. It's not a surprise to me that Trump has now changed his position. You know, he's run the last couple of years on changing the Supreme Court essentially with his appointees and therefore overturning Roe v. Wade. Now all of a sudden he's kind of moving back from that position. So I think Janelle is right. He's probably reading the polls and, you know, changing the direction of his political stances as usual. But at the end of the day, I don't think this is going to help Republicans. So if you want to keep pushing this issue, go right ahead. But clearly most Americans believe that women should have their right to choose. And let me say one more thing. Janelle mentioned that she'd like to see her party go back to conservatism. And I think what we're missing here too, and my question when it comes to Republicans now is, you're the party of personal responsibility, you're the party of less government, but it seems that you're moving more and more towards let me control everything about everyone, including the most personal thing, which is a woman's body.
All right, respond to that.
Obviously, I disagree with my colleague here. Number one, the flip side of the coin is that President Biden and the Democrat Senate is on record as having abortion right up to the time of birth. So you talk about radicalism and you talk about trying to control people. Anyhow, I think a couple things I would debate with my friend Janelle. I don't think a dose of populism in the party, I'm a Reagan conservative, but I welcome a dose of populism. What do I mean by that? The Republican Party under Trump, he was the first presidential candidate that declared flatly, this is a workers' party. And we brought in a ton of blue-collar votes, which we never had before. And I think he's keeping them. He's keeping suburban women. He's keeping the independents and the moderates right now, according to the polling. I think the key, yes, abortion is a compelling issue, but I think when you go to the grocery store and you see gasoline prices and inflation, that's going to be the key in the elections next year.
Okay, Melita, I need you to put a button on this for me quickly, please.
Well, it is my day job to help pro-choice Democratic women get elected. And we will see this play out in several very key suburban House and Senate races in Georgia where the Republican incumbents are for the 6-week ban, and we have strong Democratic women candidates already recruited, already raising money, who are opposed to the 6-week ban.
But you're for abortion up to the time of birth?
No.
Oh, good.
But those late-term abortions are incredibly rare, and usually for
medically necessary
reasons.
Under horrible circumstances.
That's not what Biden and the Senate Democrats said.
You are mischaracterizing, and we were told to make this short, and I can't debate it with you point by point.
We're going to leave that there. All right. Coming up, lawyers for the so-called fake electors make their case in federal court, and if Georgia has to redraw its political maps, it could make some races a lot more interesting. We'll be right back.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
Lawyers for the 3 indicted fake Trump electors in Georgia were in federal court this week, arguing that their cases should be moved there from state court. Attorneys for former Georgia GOP Chairman David Schaefer, State Senator Sean Still, and former Coffee County GOP Chairwoman Kathy Latham told the judge they were contingent electors, protecting the former president's options were he to prevail in court, which of course he did not. Interestingly, Special Prosecutor Jack Smith seems to back some of that up in the federal indictment of the former president, saying some of the electors were tricked into participating. The special prosecutor in the Georgia case, Anna Cross, called that nonsense and a fantasy this week. So, Melita, contingent or fake? What do you say?
I think it's fake, and what we see is a bunch of lawyers who are being paid by the hour. They're going to sacrifice a lot of trees on the altar of justice as this set of cases plays out over the next few weeks, and different lawyers will throw different things against the wall, seeing what sticks. So we're going to see a lot of motions that we've never heard of before. on behalf of different defendants. So it's just the way the case is going to play out.
Yeah, the indictments, Phil, say that these people, these fake electors, they call them, their intention was to disrupt and delay the proceedings on January 6th.
Well, that's not true, because what the defense lawyers are arguing and what the alternate electors are arguing is we're acting under an active legal case just to question the results and to see if there was cheating and mismanagement, etc. And if there wasn't, let's bear in mind, it was dropped right after that. It never did extend into January 6th. I think that's the weakness of where the prosecutors are. And they were taking the lawyers' advice. The Democrats have used alternate electors before in previous elections. Melita forgot to say that. And so there was nothing wrong, according to the defense attorneys, for them using the alternate electors now under a legal case that was active at the time and then dropped.
Alicia, what do you say?
I say that Phil keeps using the same talking points, and they're not true. Melita did not forget to say that the cases are not the same. There's truth to both of those points, that they were tricked, it turns out. When you read more of the indictments, you understand that the fake electors who were selected were told that they were doing this because of pending lawsuits. Well, one of the lawsuits that Georgia was involved in was thrown out 2 days before that fake election, right? They weren't told that. And so what is interesting to me as I see these Republicans now who are involved in this, what about your party, right? What does that say about your party that they allowed you to be roped into a criminal enterprise? And so they were tricked in some cases, but they should have been smart enough to get good legal advice. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. And so now they're being held accountable for what was clearly an effort done by Chesner, whatever his name is. Excuse me, you can correct me if you know the right. Chesbro. He's the one that wrote this memo to begin with. He's the one that got the other three lawyers dismissed from the campaign because he wanted to lead this effort. He knew, along with Giuliani, they were both the masterminds of this effort, obviously taking notes from their president at the time, to create this effort in 6 different states, all battlegrounds. All of this enterprise was the same plan across all of these 6 states. This was an enterprise, it was a criminal activity, and it's unfortunate that they didn't do their homework and get the right legal advice. Instead, they've been roped up in an illegal criminal enterprise, and they have to be held accountable along with everyone else who's involved in this.
Alleged criminal activity.
Now, when they met on December 14th of 2020, they did so in secret. Does that suggest some consciousness of guilt that they were doing the wrong thing?
I mean, I don't know the whole meeting in secret and all that part. What I will say this, though, is that I agree it's an alleged criminal enterprise. These people have not been convicted of anything. That's number one. But number two, I think we have to be clear when we look at this situation. I don't understand why they're trying to push their stuff to the feds. I mean, they have a 98% conviction rate, so I wouldn't want anything associated with the feds. However, I will say that when I look at what happened, to your point, I read the indictment, and I do agree that there was a lot of pressuring that took place. There were other states that vowed not to go this route, and they didn't. I don't understand exactly what was said that made them feel comfortable with doing this. However, again, I'm still trying to find the criminal enterprise. That's the problem that Fani Willis is going to have, is that they have to prove that all these people work together and that it was planned ahead of time to work together in order to overturn the election. And I don't think that's what it was. I really do feel like people thought they were acting in good faith and they were just making sure we have a backup.
Russ, just a footnote. It was not a secret. They held a news conference and the media was there.
It was absolutely a secret. The text messages make it very clear that
it was a secret.
It began
until George Chidi and Greg Boosting showed up. It was a secret.
They had a news conference right after they had done it, and so the secrecy was evaporated.
That's not the crime, but why lie about it? If it's not a secret, then say it's not.
I'm like, why talk about it?
Melita, you got the last word.
But the reporters were asked to leave the meeting.
They were told it was an education meeting.
Yeah, well, the reporters
they
were
had
also asked to leave when they were counting ballots as well, and everything was fine with that. So, I mean, I just think this is just let's just keep it focused on the actual crime that may have been committed.
But Alicia had a strong point. There were people who were scheduled to be fake electors who did ask for legal advice and refused to play along.
Yes. All right, we're going to leave it there. Coming up, more trouble in Georgia's jails and prisons and more migrants at the southern border. We'll be right back.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
U.S. Senator John Ossoff says the Justice Department should investigate the Clayton County Jail. It's already probing deplorable conditions at the Fulton County Jail, which is considering spending tens of millions of dollars to move some inmates to southeast Georgia and even Mississippi to relieve overcrowding. In Clayton County, Ossoff pointed to reports of violent and unsanitary conditions and a pattern of civil rights violations. Former Sheriff Victor Hill, of course, was convicted last year of exactly that for strapping 6 detainees into restraint chairs. Let's point out that all of these, not all of these, but a lot of these inmates haven't even had their day in court yet. So they haven't been convicted. What are we going to do?
Okay, so I've heard things, and I think we've all have heard some things as it relates to the Clayton County Jail. And I do think that these are issues that need to be addressed. However, I feel like Senator Ossoff is doing some political posturing here. The reason why I say that is because as I was reading all these stories around him and wanting to bring in the feds, the federal investigation, and all of this stuff, I said to myself, let me search Ossoff visits county jail. Nothing came up. Then I said, well, let me search Ossoff spoke with commissioners. Nothing has come up. There's commissioners, there's city council, there's the sheriff department, there's local leaders. There's so many people that I think that he could partner with to try to figure out how to address this and mitigate this before jumping to a federal investigation. The big move in and of itself looks like he's setting up something for his election. So that's what I'm thinking.
I mean, the Fulton County Jail, Alicia, is in the news almost every day. Pat Labat saying, don't give me your misdemeanor nonviolent offenders. I don't have room for them. Yeah.
This is an indication of a much more complex problem. There's a problem in the court system that's moving very slowly. It's not getting to enough cases. You have people who are languishing in jail for years before even getting a trial, getting a hearing. That is unacceptable. It is awful when you hear and read some of the articles about what's happening both in Fulton and Clayton, and it has to be unacceptable. I don't know the intentions of Senator Ossoff, but I'm glad that he's showing leadership to ask for this investigation. This needs to happen both in Fulton and in Clayton. Happy that that's happening, and I would argue that perhaps we need this federal investigation because perhaps at the county level they haven't figured out what to do. And people need to act. Lives are in danger. We've had 6 people die in the last 6 weeks in Fulton County. This is a leadership problem, I think, at the local level, and perhaps the federal government stepping in should help. The one question, though, that I have, I'm still trying to understand, is there's an agreement with the city of Atlanta to use its jail. Right now, the agreement with Fulton County is to have 700 beds, but it has a capacity for 1,200. So I'm trying to understand why we're talking about going 3 hours outside of Atlanta, going to another state to house inmates in private prisons when you can go almost across the street to the jail that can hold 1,200. So I've got questions around that.
All right, Melita, I want to get you in on this, and it's not just county jails. The state prison system is suffering with corruption.
AJC has a long investigative report about the corruption within the state prison system. Literally, criminals running criminal campaigns from their prison cells. Charles Bethea also did a really long investigative piece in the New Yorker recently about a man stealing millions from billionaires from a Georgia prison cell. So it's not just the county jails that are in problems. And then the other thing is the non-felony offenses. You have people who have been in the Fulton County Jail for longer before a trial than they would if they had been sentenced by a judge. So there's something that needs to happen, and it's going to take state and county officials to figure it out together, because you've got to have more judges to process these cases.
Okay. As always, I'm running out of time, but I want to give you a chance, Phil, to talk about the immigration crisis on the southern border, perhaps while we run some of the video of a lot of Venezuelan men in particular, thousands coming across an Eagle Pass, 2,700 migrants on Tuesday, 3,000 on Wednesday alone, and Governor Kemp was one of a couple dozen governors who sent a letter to President Biden about this.
That's right, Russ, and it's a national scandal, a humanitarian crisis. It's a disgrace. Biden and the Open Borders lobby have let in over 6 million people since he was inaugurated. We don't know who they are. It's a human trafficking disgusting. It's a drug trafficking shocker, and even some Democrats now are finally speaking out. But yes, Governor Kemp and 24 other governors wrote a letter, scathing letter to the president, saying we are afraid. We don't even know where the federal government is dumping these people. They're being dumped in all 50 states, including Georgia, and it's swamping our healthcare centers and our schools, etc.
All right. I wish I had more time for all of you to respond to that. Thank you very much. Winners and losers are after this.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
All right, Janelle, start us off.
All right, so first I want to say happy anniversary to my husband. We celebrated 4 years, and I'm so proud. And shout out to the restaurant, The Optimist, who welcomed us, and Ed, the bartender. And lastly, if you're in Oconee County, we will be there on Monday, the 25th at 6 p.m. So we'd like to see all of you at the Oconee GOP.
Alicia.
So I'm going to start with my loser first, and that is for Rudy Giuliani, who missed the deadline this week to pay the legal fees of the election workers that we know what he did to them. So pay your bills, sir. The winner for me for this week is my chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and our Legacy of Pearls Foundation. We are hosting a fundraiser this weekend to raise scholarships for students, and so congratulations on a successful event, and I'm proud of the work that we do.
Okay, you got 30 seconds to split here.
I think a winner could be moving about 500 inmates down to southeast Georgia. And also UGA Rugby, one of the top 20 in the nation, they're a winner.
Melita?
Heather Cox Richardson's new book, Democracy Awakening, will be previewed at the October 10th Carter Center event, where I'll be asking the questions. It's a sellout, but you can buy the book and get a live stream link.
You guys are great, as always. I enjoy being with you, and Lori will be back next week. Have a great Sunday.